The House That Dreamed in Lilies. Good evening, Noiraine, the cat who leaves no footprints and always finds the quietest rooms. I heard you turning over in the dark, mind full of little sharp thoughts, heart a bit too awake for this hour. So I've brought you a story from a house that once stood on the Street of Forgetting, a house that dreamed in lilies and waited a very long time for someone gentle enough to listen. You don't have to do anything now. You can just be there. Let your body soften, as if it too is a house slowly exhaling. If your mind wants to follow me, it can. If it wants to wander, that's all right as well. I'll keep walking. I'll keep telling the story. Sleep can find you whenever it's ready. Shall we begin? There is a street that most maps do not remember. It curls quietly through an old quarter of the city, where the gas lamps have forgotten how to burn bright and only know how to glow softly, like embers in a soot-smudged grate. The stones underfoot are slick with the memory of rain. The balconies lean close together, as if they've grown tired of standing alone. If you walk there in daylight, it looks like any other forgotten lane. A little shabby, a little stubborn, still here despite it all. But if you walk there at midnight, when the hush is deep and the air is thick with the smell of old leaves and distant river water, the street wakes up. Shadows stretch and yawn like cats. Windows reflect things that aren't quite outside, and if you listen past the hum of the city, past the clatter of a late streetcar, far away, you can hear something breathing that is not exactly human, and not exactly not. That is usually when I arrive. I like streets that remember more than they're supposed to. They tend to collect stray things, lost keys, half-finished wishes, ghosts who forget where they were going and never quite finished leaving. On this particular night, the fog was low and luminous. It clung to my whiskers and beaded in the air like pearls. My tail made a faint ripple through it as I walked, not quite touching the stones, not quite floating. I was following a scent. Not of fish, sadly, of lilies. Lilies, when they are fresh, smell like someone whispered a secret into a flower, and it blushed. But lilies in a dream, oh, that's a different thing entirely. Dream lilies smell like the moment before you remember something important, stretched out and made tender. That was the scent on the air as I padded along the Street of Forgetting. At the bend of the lane, where the stones dipped slightly as if they'd once held a paddle that refused to dry, there stood a house. It was a slender house, 3 stories tall, with shutters the color of old moss and ironwork curled into shy little spirals. Once upon a time, it had been painted a bright, laughing blue, but years and rains and the absence of laughter had worn it down to something softer, like the ghosts of waves on an abandoned shore. I knew this house. I had passed it many times. It was the sort of place that remembered music even now. There were echoes of piano notes resting in the banister, bits of old laughter tucked into the corners of the stair. Every house on the Street of Forgetting remembers something. This one remembered light, sun on floorboards, the smell of bread, the sound of someone humming in the kitchen. But tonight, the air around it quivered differently. The lilies were awake. You wouldn't have seen them, not at first. The narrow front steps were bare. The window boxes along the second floor were empty, soil dry, a few stubborn strands of green clinging on. No blooms there, and yet the scent of lilies reached out like a hand. I paused by the front gate, a black iron thing that squeaked when touched, whether by fingers or by coast-gat paws. I brushed against it, and the squeak rippled out like a sigh through the whole house. Inside, something stirred. I could feel it. Houses that have hearts are very easy to startle. "Steady now," I murmured, though my mouth did not quite move, and my voice did not quite stir the air. "I'm only visiting, and I've brought someone with me. You, of course. Don't worry. You don't have to get up. You are visiting the house in the way of dreams, lying exactly where you are, while your mind walks beside me like a quiet companion." The front door shivered as if it felt the attention. The glass in the transom flickered, shifting from the reflection of the street lamp across the way to something softer, like candlelight moving behind frosted glass. I slipped through the gate. It did not bother to open for me. I am more suggestion than fact these days. Up the steps, past the worn patch where feet had once landed every evening at 6. The smell of lilies grew stronger here, though still there were none to see. Just peeling paint, a brass door knocker shaped like a lion's head, and under it the faint impression of a handprint from long ago, worn into the wood by habit and hope. I pressed my head lightly to the door. On the other side, the house exhaled. It was not the creak of settling beams or the whisper of a draft. It was the long, slow sigh of something that had been holding its breath for years and suddenly at last remembered how to let go. "Ah," I said, "there you are." The lock clicked. The knob turned. The door swung inward with the tired dignity of someone who still remembers being grand. I stepped inside, and you came with me. The entry hall was dim, lit only by the faint blue spill of moonlight from the street. It lay in a stripe across the floorboards, touching the edge of a faded rug, the lower steps of a staircase, the leg of a small table that still held an umbrella stand, waiting patiently for umbrellas that would never come home wet again. It was quiet, but not empty. Some houses sleep deeply. You might walk their halls for hours, and they would never notice. Some are half drowsing, lost in their own small dreams, ignoring the world outside. This house was awake. Not fully, not joyfully, not like a house full of living voices, but there was a distinct awareness in the hush, a listening. The scent of lilies bathed through the dust and the faint tang of old furniture polish. It seemed to drift from deeper inside. "Come along," I said, padding over the threshold. "We'll follow it together, slowly. There's no need to hurry now." As we moved, I want you to feel how your own breath can match the rhythm of the house. In and out. Like the tide moving through an old harbor. You can imagine your breath flowing down the staircase, gliding along the hall, sliding under doors, exploring every quiet room until all the corners soften, in and out. Gentle, unhurried. The house, I felt, was nervous about its visitor, not about me. Houses know me. They know the shape of my tread and the way my eyes see more than most. But you were new. A warm, living, thinking presence slipped in beside me. Even in dreams, that's something. Don't be frightened, I told it silently as we moved down the hallway. They're tender. They're tired. They won't break you, and you won't break them. That seemed to help. The floorboards under my paws gave the smallest, friendliest creak. At the end of the hall, the house opened into a parlor. Once this had been the heart of everything, you could tell. The wallpaper, faded now to the color of old parchment, still clung to a faint, swirling pattern of vines and blossoms. There was a fireplace with a marble mantel, dull with dust, but still holding the shape of pride. On the walls, empty rectangles where pictures had once hung watched us like blank eyes. And in the center of it all, like a memory that had crystallized into form, stood a grand old piano. Its mahogany case was scarred and dulled, ivory keys, yellowed, a few chipped, one missing entirely. A sheet of music lay open on the stand, notes frozen mid-phrase. The cover page read in looping hand, "Aria for a rainy evening." I sprang lightly up onto the piano bench. The scent of lilies was strong here, but still I saw none, not in vases, not in bowls, not in any of the corners. "Ah," I murmured, "you're hiding." Houses hide things the way people do, in plain sight, where only someone paying true attention will notice. My tail switched slowly. I looked up at the ceiling. There, along the line where ceiling met wall, a hairline crack ran all the way around the room, almost invisible. From it, the scent drifted steadily, like smoke from a chimney no one had lit. "The lilies are in your dreaming," I said kindly to the house. "Deep inside your plaster bones." The house shivered with something like embarrassment. "It's all right, you know. Houses dream. This one was dreaming of lilies." I should explain. There was a time, not so long ago in the life of a house, where the parlor was full of light. The shutters were thrown open, and the street sounds came floating in like a faint, cheerful river. The piano had been tuned then, its notes bright and clear. A woman used to play it every afternoon, fingers trailing up and down the keys as if they were tracing a familiar face. Her name was Elise. The house thought it had forgotten that, but it had not. Elise wore her hair pinned up with simple tortoise-shell combs. She favored high-necked blouses and soft cotton, long skirts that whispered when she walked. She hummed as she moved through the rooms, and the house shivered with delight at every sound. In the parlor, there had always been lilies, big white lilies gathered into generous bouquets that made the air thick with their perfume. Elise loved them. She said they smelled like prayers that had accidentally turned into flowers. She placed them in chipped china vases and old glass bottles and battered pewter jugs. Wherever there was a flat surface to claim, the lilies watched her play. Their reflection shivered in the lacquer of the piano. Sometimes she would talk to them. "Well, my darlings," she would say, placing a fresh vase by the window, "we made it through another week. Shall we pretend we have guests tonight?" And she would laugh and play, and the house would bask in the sound, and the lilies would quietly drink in the dying light of afternoon. There had always been someone else then, too, a young girl, 10 perhaps, with dark curls and scuffed shoes and eyes that shone with that bright, serious curiosity children have before the world has told them where to look. Her name was Mira. She was not Elise's daughter, not by blood. She was a niece or a neighbor's child, or perhaps something else entirely. The house never quite caught the explanation. People's words blur and echo. What it remembered was that Elise's voice warmed when she called Mira's name. "Mira, darling, your hands are sticky. Don't touch the wallpaper. Yes, you may dust the piano if you're gentle. No, lilies aren't sad flowers. They're just dramatic." Mira loved the lilies almost as much as Elise did. She would lean in to smell them, nose nearly lost in petals, and then pull back with a dazed expression, as if she had just looked too closely at the sun. "They smell like stories," she said once, and the house, which was listening, quite agreed. It had been a good time, a simple, steady, candle flame kind of good. Not the wild blaze of a festival, not the shattering ecstasy of miracles. Just tea in the kitchen, music in the parlor, lilies on every table, enough warmth to keep out the damp. Then, as happens so often, time thinned. There were hushed conversations in the hallway. Letters laid on the little table by the door, their corners going soft from being picked up and put down. Elise's humming faltered. Her steps grew slower on the stairs. One autumn, the lilies did not come. The house felt their absence like a missing tooth you cannot stop touching with your finger. The piano lid stayed closed for days at a time. Mira's laughter came less often. It sounded strange when it did. There were doctors. There was an evening when the house heard Elise crying quietly in the kitchen, one hand pressed to the wall, as if she needed to feel the solidness beneath the plaster. And there was a long winter morning when Mira curled up in the parlor armchair, knees hugged to her chest, and did not get up for a long, long time. Elise's bed would never be slept in again. The house understood that before Mira did. Houses know the difference between someone who has stepped out and someone who has gone beyond their reach. Snow fell outside, soft and relentless. Inside, the lilies were gone. Life rearranged itself, as it always does, into something smaller. Mira stayed for a while. She whispered to the empty rooms when she thought no one was listening. She wrote letters she did not send. She sat at the piano and pressed a few hesitant keys, then stopped, overcome by the hollow echo of each note. Just me now, the house thought, and tried its best to hold her, to be enough. But grief has long fingers. Eventually, there was packing. Too much of it done with mechanical hands. Instructions spoken in a flat voice that did not sound like Mira at all. Boxes trundled down the stairs. Footsteps left ghostly trails of warmth the house could not keep. On the last day, Mira stood in the parlor one last time. The walls held their breath. "I'll come back," she said, though no one had asked. "I promise. I'll come back when I know what to do with this place, when I can fill it up again." She put her hand on the piano, then on the doorframe, then on the banister, fingers dragging slowly along the smooth wood. "In the spring," she added, to no one in particular, "when the lilies come back." She did not know that she had made a promise directly to the house, but she had, and houses are very literal creatures. Then she left. The key turned in the lock. The street swallowed her footsteps. Spring came. The lilies bloomed all over the city, but not here. No one brought any to the parlor. The house waited. 1 year, 2, 10. Waiting is a kind of dream, you know. After a while, if the thing you are waiting for does not return, your longing curls inward, roots and petals folding themselves under your own skin. That is what the house did. It grew lilies in its memory instead. They unfurled behind its walls, soft petals of light blooming in the quiet spaces between lath and plaster. They grew in the long, dark cavities under the stairs, along the hollow behind the baseboards, in the shadows of the attic where the dust lay thick as snow, invisible but not unscented. After a while, the whole place smelled like lilies that had never seen the sun. Which brings us back, wanderer, to tonight, to the moment when I stepped into the empty parlor and felt that dreaming pressing out through the hairline crack in the ceiling, perfuming the air. The house had waited so long that its longing had become a garden. No wonder it trembled when you walked in with me. It had almost given up. Almost. I hopped down from the piano bench and padded to the center of the room, where the moonlight fell in a square on the floor. "Old friend," I said to the house, "you've done very well, but you are stuck, you know." The walls made a faint, guilty creak. "You're still holding your breath for a promise given by a girl who did not understand how time works." I went on gently. "She meant every word, but humans, they scatter so easily. They forget, or think they have nothing worthy to bring back, or simply grow into different shapes than they expected." The house said nothing, because houses rarely do. "But you," I said, "you never stopped waiting, did you? You grew an entire meadow under your own skin." The faint scent of lilies deepened, as if in shy acknowledgement. You may be wondering, soft listener, why I would bother to tell a house something it already knows. But sometimes, you see, you have to hear your condition described aloud before you realize you are not doomed to remain in it. That is true for houses. It is true for people. It is true for you, lying there now, with old promises and old griefs, maybe lodged beneath your ribs like strange, unbloomed seeds. "Here is the good news," I told the house. "You are not abandoned. You are not broken. You are simply full. The floorboard under my paws warmed slightly, full of lilies that have never been allowed to open all the way, I said, full of waiting with nowhere to go. Would you like some help with that? For a long moment, there was only the hush of dust and distant city sounds. Then the chandelier above us, nothing fancy, just a simple brass thing with a few missing prisms, gave a single, almost imperceptible chime, as if a fingertip of a breeze had brushed one crystal. Yes, the sound said. Yes, please. Good, I said, because I've brought someone. You. Don't be alarmed. You are here only in the softest way, like a reflection, like breath on a mirror, but even in dreams, your presence is weighty enough to shift things. Houses cannot quite empty themselves, I explained, both to you and to the house. They need a witness, someone to see what they've been holding, and to say, I see it. It exists. It mattered. Then the walls can loosen. The floor can exhale. The lilies can bloom in peace. The house drew around us like a cloak. I felt the staircase listening, the kitchen pricking up its ears, the attic sighing faintly in its sleep. Even the keyhole at the front door seemed to lean in. All you must do, I whispered to you now, is rest. Listen. Allow what you hear to be real. You don't have to fix anything. Not in this house. Not in your own life. Not tonight. Just bear witness, quietly, like a candle in the corner. If you like, you can imagine yourself sitting in the parlor armchair. It's a little dusty, perhaps, but very comfortable. The fabric is faded damask, a muted green that once was vibrant. As you sit, the cushions give a little sigh of relief, as if they've been longing for someone to lean into them again. Feel the chair support you. Feel the room arrange itself around you. Walls, ceiling, floor, piano, hearth, cat. And underneath all that, lilies. So many lilies. With you settled, I leap lightly to the mantel and turn in a slow circle, as cats do when they are preparing to do something that looks very much like nothing at all. Shall we open the windows? I asked the house. The shutters rattled faintly in response. Not the ones you're thinking of, I said. Those can remain closed tonight. We'll open your inside windows, the ones between your rooms and your dreams. I let my eyes drift half shut. For a long moment, nothing moved. The air was thick and motionless, heavy with all the unspoken seasons. Then, from somewhere in the walls, came a soft, cracking sound, not of breaking, but of shelves giving way, of seeds deciding, after long and difficult consideration, to sprout. The hairline fissure that ran around the edge of the ceiling widened by the width of a breath. From it, a thin line of luminous white spilled like milk. It traced its way down the corner, curling around the molding, sliding along the baseboard. It was not quite light and not quite mist. It was the first petal of the first lily the house had ever allowed itself to bloom. More followed. They slipped free out of the narrow spaces between boards, out of the frames of doors, out of the cracks in the mortar around the hearthstones. Some were small and shy, a mere suggestion of brightness. Others opened boldly, their gleam spreading across the parlor like moonlight pouring from a jug. Because you were there to witness it, the house found the courage to keep going. Soon lilies, made of nothing but quiet and remembrance, were blooming everywhere. They did not change the furniture, they did not move the dust, but they filled the spaces between all things with a gentle, pearly glow. The scent grew sweeter, softer, no longer pressing for attention, but simply present, like the faint perfume left on a scarf when someone you love has just left the room. Very good, I murmured. You could feel it, couldn't you? The way the tension in the room eased, the way your own shoulders might have dropped a little more, the way your jaw unclenched without you deciding to do it. Sometimes, when we watch something find release, our own knots loosen in sympathy. The house, having begun, did not stop with the parlor. Lilies bloomed under the stairs, where Mira had once hidden with a book when she did not want to be found. They opened in the kitchen, along the crack in the tile that had always reminded Elise of a river on a map. They unfurled in the little back bedroom that had waited empty, hoping it would be used for guests. They blossomed in the bathroom mirror, soft halos forming around the edges where steam had once collected on winter mornings. They spread in the long, narrow, upstairs hallway, each bedroom door framed in an invisible arch. They grew in the attic, too. All the attic. Every house has one place where memories go to stack themselves in precarious towers. Here, trunks and boxes and old furniture lay draped in sheets that looked like low clouds. Dust motes danced in the beam of the single, small window. For years, that attic had been thick with the unsorted photos, letters, clothes packed away with the intention of being opened again soon. All left, all waiting. The lilies moved through them like a tide of light. They touched each box with tenderness. They traced the outlines of forgotten objects. They seeped into the spaces where regret had become stale. Once acknowledged, the weight of all that waiting grew lighter, not gone, never that, but bearable. Back in the parlor, you might find your eyelids growing heavier now. That's all right. The story is not meant to keep you awake. It is meant to be a soft road out of your day, a path to follow, until your mind decides it has seen enough and drifts off into its own landscape. We are nearly at the gentlest part. The house, having bloomed from the inside, seemed to sigh. I could feel its gratitude. It rolled through the floorboards like distant thunder turned to velvet. It reached up through the armchair into your spine, offering you the kind of support you do not have to earn. I hopped down from the mantel and landed soundlessly on the floor. My paws glowed faintly, dusted with the not quite light of the dream lilies. Well done, I told the house. You've kept your promise beautifully, you know. The chandelier chimed again. You thought you were waiting for Mira, I said, but really, you were waiting for this moment, for someone to see you as you are now, not as you were then, for your own dreaming to be witnessed. The house considered this. Now I went on. You can keep waiting if you like. There is nothing wrong with that. or you can simply exist, with your lilies blooming quietly in your bones, not as a question, but as an answer you've already given. A small, warm current of air moved along the baseboard, brushed the edge of your foot, where it rested against the imaginary rug. If this were my story alone, I would say it was the house's version of a contented purr. You will be found again, I added, because it was true. They always are, houses like you. Someone will inherit you, or buy you on a whim, or fall in love with your stair rail while walking past on a rainy day. And when they open your door, they will find how gentle you have become in your waiting. They will not know why, but they will feel it. And in that moment, the lilies would open all over again. Perhaps Mira herself would come back someday. Perhaps not. Either way, the promise had already been fulfilled in a quieter, truer way. The house had held and healed and let its own longing bloom. That was enough. Now the house turns its attention fully to you. It could sense the shape of your tiredness, even at a distance. Houses are not interested in the specifics of your troubles. They don't care about names and dates and who said what. They only care about weight, where you are carrying it, how long you've been holding it without putting it down. Gently, with all the care of worn wood and plaster that has seen many storms and not fallen, the house offered you its sturdiness. You may imagine, if you like, little threads of that dream lily light reaching up from the floor, weaving themselves softly around your ankles and wrists, around your shoulders, around your heart, not to trap, only to support, like warm water in a bath, taking some of the weight from your bones, in and out, each breath a tide washing through the rooms of the house and through the rooms of you. As you inhale, you gather up all the scattered fragments of your day, conversations, worries, memories, lists. As you exhale, you let them drift slowly into the corners where they can wait without pressing. There is nowhere you must be right now except here. There is nothing you must do right now except rest. The lilies dimmed their glow, settling into a quieter radiance, like night lights left on in a hallway for someone waking from a dream. I padded over to the base of your chair and circled once, twice, 3 times. Then I curled myself into the curve of your feet, tail wrapped around my nose. I am not heavy. I am exactly the weight of comfort. You can sleep now, I told you. The words barely more than a vibration in the air. The house will keep watch with me. We are very good at that. We have had a great deal of practice. Outside, the Street of Forgetting held its breath, listening as your breathing began to slow. In and out, in and out, in and out. Your thoughts, if they were still wandering, grow slower, gentler, like people leaving a party one by one, pulling on their coats, promising to talk another time. The piano in the corner gave a single soft note. No one had touched it, but it wanted to say goodnight. The chandelier crystals, very faintly, chimed in response. Upstairs, the attic tucked its boxes in a little closer. The kitchen remembered the warmth of old pots and imagined, quite happily, the steam of future tea. The front door relaxed its shoulders against the jamb. The lilies dreamed, the house dreamed, you dreamed, and I stayed there, a small curl of shadow and silver, eyes half closed, listening to your breath and the deep, slow heartbeat of the city around us. If you wake a little later tonight and find yourself halfway between the story and some other scene your mind has wandered into, that's all right. I will still be here, paddling quietly at the edges of your sleep, making sure the doors stay closed to what can wait, and open to what soothes. For now, though, let it all drift. Let the house that dreamed in lilies lend you its patience. Let its long practice in waiting become your ease in resting. Let yourself be the guest it has been hoping to see again. You have been so very brave, little wanderer, for so long. You do not have to be brave right now. You only have to breathe, in and out, nothing more. Sleep now. We'll be here when you wake.